I don't know what the topic was, but the genocide comes up, joke is made, everyone laughs, camera pans to me, and I'm just sitting there. And we ended, and I went to Harvey Levin, executive producer, creator of the show, and I said, you need to take that out of the show. And he said, why? I said, you can't air that, Harvey. And he said, well, we're gonna air it. I said, go right ahead then, you'll see. So I went back to my desk, he came and sat next to me. He said, we make jokes about the Holocaust all the time. And I turned to him and I said, no one denies the Holocaust. You can't make jokes like that, Harvey Levin. He took it out of the show. And to me, that was a moment of how important it is to have Armenian representation in media to monitor and stop these kinds of situations that happen, because for them it's a funny show, we do this all the time. And I was like, no, you can't do this. It's not okay, it's not meant to be funny. You're turning the camera to my face, you're trying to get a rise out of me. I said, it's inappropriate, we're taking this out of the show. And I think I was like 22 at the time.
Nice job.
Yeah.
That's great.
And he could have fired me, or but he was like, fine, walked out. He said, we're taking that out of the show. And I was like, and then the producer comes to me and goes, why'd you have, now what were we gonna do? How are we gonna fill 1 minute and 30 seconds, right? I don't know, figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. Yeah, nice job. Yeah, oh, I was gonna go to, okay, Alina, you can go. Oh. Living in a town of 70,000 people on the Mexican border, I managed to meet an Armenian woman, Zarmina Bigajanyan. I'll never forget her. She stood out for sure, belly dance classes and everything. And that was the same year that it was the century that we marked the Armenian genocide, still waiting for that recognition in this country. And I took that opportunity. I said, Zarmina, I found out that she was, her great-grandparents were survivors and they fled to Syria. So I said, would you like to do this story with me so we can tell people about this point in history that should never be forgotten? So we sat down together, I did the report, and it was incredible because, in a small town, it's slightly easier to get stories out there because it isn't as competitive, with millions of people in Los Angeles looking for that same recognition, looking for their time on the newscast. So it's a little bit easier in a small town to get your story out there, but it was incredible to see the people sending me emails, and they would see me out in the streets. They'd say, thank you so much for sharing Zarmina's story and about the Armenian genocide, because I had no idea that even happened. So, you take your opportunities to be able to educate people because history repeats itself, and that's something that people need to learn about.
Mm-hmm. Nice job.
Alina.
I absolutely agree with these ladies. You have to make them care, even when they don't want to hear it. I think that, and I told my boss this, I said, you can't use my last name for your benefit and not do stories that actually matter. And you can't just send me to cover the marches once a year and call it a day. That's not enough. Because the average person sees the marches, but they don't really understand the depth of what happened and why we care and why we do this and why we're still angry 100 years later. It's because there's so much more to it. There's a lot of context, and a lot of that has not been discussed yet, at least not on broadcast news. So one year I said, okay, how can I do this where I am being unbiased? Because obviously being an Armenian and covering a story about the Armenian genocide, it doesn't really come off as sincere. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go interview a Turkish man. And that Turkish man was Taner Akçam. And I went to my boss's office one day, I said, the company is gonna pay for me to go to Boston, and I'm gonna interview this person because he has done incredible work, and he's come up with, or figured out this piece of evidence that is considered the smoking gun. There's this whole article in the New York Times, we need to cover it. This is gonna actually be interesting to our audience in a way that is different from just covering the marches, from just seeing our flags up and, just that it's not just that one day, there's so much more to this. And when I interviewed this man who's been published, he has books, he's very well known, he's a historian on Holocaust studies, he said, this is the first news interview I've ever done. And that to me was mind-boggling because this person is so well known, and he's done such in-depth work when it comes to our cause that he can literally blow the lid off of the argument. There is no argument. But he said something to me that always stayed with me, and he said, truth needs power. And I think that power sometimes we can all recognize within ourselves. For me personally, even if my stories don't make a difference, I know that I'm at least educating people here that otherwise would never know about this cause. And my boss, who's a very intelligent person, said, I never knew this side of it until I saw your stories. And now he cares. And now anytime I want to do a story, this was 4 years ago, the initial conversation, he allows me to do it. And when I said, I want to go to Armenia this year, or I want to interview this person and this, that, he doesn't stand in my way anymore because he understands this is temporary. The denial portion is temporary. We will eventually get there. And I think he realized we need to be on the right side of the argument and not the other.
I'm gonna shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about social media, because I think if you are a public figure, social media is really, really important. And so I want to ask you guys how you use social media to sort of boost your persona, and how you navigate how much of your personal life that you post versus how much of your professional life you mix in there. So, okay, we're going to go this way. It's just easier for me to keep track. Alina, you can go first.
I'm still confused about social media, to be honest. I have a love-hate relationship with it. When you spend 6 hours a day on television with a camera in front of you, the last thing I want to do is go home and put a camera in my face. And so it's a learning curve. I think that I'm just now learning how we can use it toward our benefit and how we can share stories. You know, Anna's a great example of how social media can be used to educate. So I think it's just a matter of time before a lot of information, how it gets across, is strictly through social media. So I need to also make a better, do a better job of that. You know, like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with it. I find social media to be very surface, and it's hard to get, to sort of dig deep or to make people care just on a few comments or a few pictures. Mm-hmm. I put pictures of my kids, and I put pictures when I travel and things like that. And people love that. And I think sometimes when I put articles about stories that matter to me, sometimes I get messages from people saying, well, why do we care about this? I'm following you because I like your pretty pictures. I don't care about, this serious article. And I think that sometimes discourages you to think that, am I really giving people too much, or am I being too boring? Isn't social media supposed to be light? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I think people know who you are through social media, so you have to use it towards spreading that greater message. It's a balance.
Yeah. And you and Arakelyan both had children within the last few months, mm-hmm. right?
Our kids are the same age.
Yeah. Yours is 2.5 months, and Arakelyan, how old is your daughter?
She will be 6 months in a couple days.
And we have 3-year-olds.
We both have 3-year-olds.
They're superhuman. This job takes so much out of you, and to be able to have children on top of it all, and let alone 2, I mean, that's hats off, really.
Right, and I'm sure a lot of people appreciate seeing people in your positions going through your pregnancy and having your children, and how you navigate working and also having newborns, and how you do that. So, Arakelyan, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, believe it or not, I'm actually a private person. You would not know that if you looked on my social media. But I also, it's one of those things where it's become part of the job. And social media did not exist when I originally wanted to be a journalist, and all of the reasons I wanted to be a journalist, it's a little different now. It's almost like you're a news personality. And we are encouraged, and they expect us to engage in social media. Therefore, I find myself in this battle where I want to be private, but they want me to be active. And it's a balancing act of mixing in news stories, some behind the scenes, showing people what you do because they're curious and they're fascinated by television, and also my personal life, which I always said when I have kids, I'm never going to put a picture of them up. Yeah, right. If you check my social media right now, they're flooding my social media page.
Well, actually, really quickly, they encourage you?
Yes.
Just to give everyone an idea, 4 years ago, TMZ, we were not allowed So that's how quickly social media is moving. So now you're being encouraged.
Yes.
4 years ago, not allowed.
Yes, actually, I think, Elena, you guys have a giant board, right? Monitoring social media?
We do. I'm like last on that list. But.
Okay. So there is, so just so you have an idea, every newsroom, I believe, I think it's safe to say, they have a giant board where it monitors your social media activity in the Los Angeles market. So it monitors your engagement within the station, and then it monitors your engagement within Los Angeles against everyone else. So it's in your face. Like, you walk in and that's the first thing you see. And it's a 24-hour cycle of, like, you know, how active you are. But yes, they do want you to be involved in it. So, you know, it's, again, I would agree, it almost is a love-hate relationship where it is very useful. I'm able to communicate with everyone, and I'm able to showcase things and highlight things I otherwise wouldn't be able to do. But at the same time, you know, it's a lot of work, because the last thing I also want to do after speaking for 3 hours straight on television is to continue to speak. So rarely do I put myself on there speaking. Mostly it's pictures and articles or that sort of thing, because it takes a lot out of you. But it has become part of the job 100%. You're a journalist, and you're also expected to be a part of social media. That's just how it goes. You have to accept it. And as far as, you know, it's interesting being pregnant. I also, you know, I'm private about that as well. So there's not much I can do when I'm on television and you see me and you're a part of the experience. You know, you can place the laptop strategically in a certain way. In the field, you can kind of get away with it because you're like, shoot me tight,
I have them
or
frame you
else.
like this.
Yes, exactly. You're like, frame me tight, okay? But on the anchor desk, it's a little bit more challenging. And, you know, you have viewers. Most Americans, they love, you know, the bump shot and this and that, and you're just like, oh gosh, like, that's the last thing I want to do. That's not how I want to showcase this. But yeah, you know, people love it. They want to get to know you on a personal level. They want to care about you. And so yesterday, I actually walked into a store and people approached me and they said, I feel like you're my friend. I don't know who they are. But the point is, through social media, people get to really feel like you are their friend. And that is, again, part of the job.
It's a whole new world, yeah.
Yeah, it shows how it's changed. I mean, you know, if Walter Cronkite was around right now, he'd have to take selfies.
He is turning over in his grave right now. That reporters take selfies at crime scenes.
Right, but before you didn't really care about the personalities as much. You cared about the gravity in how they delivered the news, but now you actually want to get to know people on a more personal level.
I got in trouble. I was the person that would get in trouble. They were like, she's on Facebook again.
And now they're tracking them.
And now they're tracking.
Yeah, it's just such a fine line, because you have to maintain a professionalism throughout, because you're representing your company that you're working for. So it's a really big pressure. I mean, you want to be playful. You want to show that you're human too. I have a personal life. And then, unfortunately, as Alina also mentioned, your picture of yourself tends to get so much more interaction than a story that I believe really matters. And that the story isn't about us. We're just here to bring it to you. So it's a really fine balance of how do I keep, you know, my viewers engaged, but then also paying attention to the stories that need the exposure, because this is what my real job is. And it's unfortunate that we have to think about it, but it is also a positive, because this is how you get people that don't just live in your local area to know about these important stories that need to be shared, because it's just another, you know, way of globalization. You're getting that story spread out. There are more people who are going to see it, so hopefully it serves that purpose truly.
It is a great way, though, to get younger people to watch the news, because there's so many young people that follow me that have never even watched the news. They don't watch the news. You know, it's just not something that generation does. You know, maybe they watch like 5 minutes in the morning, but as the day progresses, they don't even turn the TV on anymore, because everyone is just on their phone. So I think it's a great way to get people to care, at least, you know, so that one day when you know, that they get the curiosity, they kind of know what channel to turn on. And I always say this to young people that say, well, I don't watch TV. I say, well, when there's a fire and we're the ones running toward that fire and you're sitting at home, guess who you're watching? You're watching us. So TV is necessary because we're still the boots on the ground, we're still the people getting that information out, and before it ever gets printed to a website, it's coming from a reporter that's there. And we just happen to have, you know, a medium that is on television. So I think it has to go hand in hand.
But I will say one thing before we move away from this, because this is Armenian women in media. We have stalkers. People get creepy, and when you're on social media sharing where you are, you're vulnerable. So how do you balance that as well?
I always post after I leave a location.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm not there anymore.
Yeah,
You
if
see my post? That was yesterday.
Don't come if you see me post something. I've left. So yeah.
And to make a point with our media report, it's so many times, it's so much easier, right, to just tell the story instead of doing what I do. Like, just turn the TV on, you can see it. But that's not where the younger demographic is. And so a lot of times when I'm putting a story together, I'm like, gotta put this in 15-second increments.
Right.
And it just makes it harder and longer, but that's how people want to see things or consume information.
And then they can engage. It's not just watching, but they can interact, they can ask questions. That's a benefit as well, I think.
Well, the attention span is short, so that's why you need the 15-second clips.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which makes it a lot harder, which is why it's doing the cliff notes, but if you want the in-depth, you have to turn the TV on.
This is reminding me, if there are young people and you're looking to get a job in journalism or any other professional field, delete those photos of you doing like keg stands or, you know, doing a beer bong at your friend's house. Just delete them before you start applying for jobs. It's very important that even when you deep dive into someone's social media, there's nothing embarrassing there. So
They watch us like a hawk. Yeah. You better believe it.
Okay, now I want to move on to some of the people that have inspired you guys, both people you've met and also people who you haven't met, who have inspired you to do the things that you do. Arakelyan, we'll start with you.
Let's see. I've been really lucky. Every person I've worked with has been a great mentor in my life. But I would say coming to Los Angeles and getting to work with Steve Edwards, my former co-anchor, was probably the most fortunate experience of my life, because I call it the Steve Edwards School of Journalism, and he really just taught me how to do proper interviews, how to go beyond being a news anchor. Because when you first get into this business, you have this perception that, well, first of all, you're trying to sound and look older, because that's what you're going for. Isn't it funny? You spend your life trying to look younger later, but in the beginning, you're trying to look older and sound older. So he really worked on, get rid of the phony anchor voice, just be yourself, because the camera doesn't lie, the camera sees genuinely who you are, and just be authentic. He was just a great teacher, and to this day, this morning he was texting me, just making comments about what I was doing and what I was saying. But he continues to be a great resource for me, so I'm very, very lucky to have that. But more than anything, I think I've had people in my corner, and I've had people believe in me and give me opportunities that I never dreamt of. So I've been very fortunate in that sense.
Yes, you are. I'm still looking for my mentor. My mentors don't know I exist. They're authors and speakers, people that don't even know that I exist. And I think finding a mentor or having a mentor, Roxy, you're so lucky and fortunate. And it's so important, because how do you find a mentor? And people come up to me like, how do you find a mentor? I was like, I don't know. Do you want to be my mentor? It's been a struggle for me. But again, I came to terms, I was like, my mentors don't need to know I exist. There's so many amazing podcasts and authors that I seek out and listen. And sometimes I meet them and then I connect with them and spark a relationship and a networking opportunity. But other than that, as far as having a mentor in this field, they don't know I exist.
I don't have one mentor in particular either, kind of like yourself. And I did kind of glaze over how I chose this profession. So going back to that, it's kind of the same answer for me. It's that I chose something that felt natural for me. I knew what I was good at or what was fun for me, and I kind of combined those two things, and it was meeting people, talking, asking questions, sharing stories. And so every day that I get to do that with somebody is just what drives me to do it again the next day. And so that's why I continue to do this job.
Same here. I wouldn't say it's one person in particular, but I remember when I was a little girl, I would watch the news in the evening when everyone watched the news. And I remember just seeing these female anchors, and it's not one anchor in particular, but they just had like this regal presence, and I just wanted to be like that. I wanted to carry myself that way. I wanted to speak that way. And it's more casual now, but I think the idea of being this poised person always stood out to me. And that's what I identified being a journalist with. That's what I identified being an anchor woman with, was this well-spoken, confident, poised person. And so I always try to remind myself of that, you know, at the end of the day, even though we're supposed to be casual now, it's morning television, you still want to be that put-together person, because there's a little girl somewhere watching, and I want them to see our profession as something that is respectable, you know, because nowadays, on the internet especially, there are a lot of people that make very bad choices, and they don't necessarily represent themselves in the best way that they could. Other mentors for me are just the people that I work with. You know, in LA, we have some of the greatest news professionals, and especially at our station, you know, we have veterans that have been there for 25, 30 years, and they're just the nicest people, and they're so amazing because they do their job in just this effortless way that you think it's easy. They make it look easy, but it really isn't, because so many times, you know, they'll lose power on the prompter, and they're just ad-libbing, and they're just talking. And I think that's one of the things that you learn. Some of you might know, I forgot his name, Chris Burrows. He recently passed away, but he told me, he's like, if you're going to be a good reporter in the field, think of it as QVC. Talk about it in the most mundane way possible, but people at home will connect to it. And I think that's, you know, you learn these little tricks along the way. So we're very lucky to work in LA, where there are people that just make it look effortless.
And Arakelyan, going back to your point about the support system, I think being Armenian, you already have a very strong support system. I think, I remember going to my parents after I graduated USC, and I was like, I'm going to take a job as a page. It's going to pay $9 an hour.
Worked as a page at CBS.
And it's you don't know if you're going to go any further, and, you know, but it always... And I think that this is probably true, I'm hoping, with all of our parents, is you can take that kind of risk and your parents will never say you can't come home. If you don't make it or something doesn't work out, you always feel as though you have a place to go back to if things don't work out. Do you guys feel as though that's pretty accurate in terms of your own sort of, like, when you told your parents you wanted to go into TV, were they like, why can't you just do something normal?
My mother encouraged me. She said, this is you. You need to go do this. It's what's going to make you happy, and if it makes you happy, you know, basically at the end of the day, no matter what job you choose, having that support system is really, really essential for any human being. When you have that, you feel limitless, like you could do whatever you feel. And so I think being a parent, I'm sure you're going to do the same for your children, and it's really important.
Parents and spouses. My husband, who's sitting right here on the front row, if it wasn't for him, I honestly would have never been in this industry, because it's very difficult to get a job that pays $10 an hour as your first reporter job and support yourself. And so, and not just in that sense, but support that in the evenings we'd watch my newscast together, and he'd critique me and he'd tell me, try this and try that. And it's so important to have a good support system. When I was in Fresno, I had a nervous breakdown at one point because I was so tired of shooting fires and being in bad neighborhoods and being by myself. I was all alone. My husband was going back and forth, and I was sobbing, and I called my mom and I said, I can't do this anymore because I don't see the path yet to LA, and I could be stuck in Fresno or God knows where for the next 10 years. And, she would always push me because she said, she would say, you have it in you, you'll get there, you'll do it. And there's one thing I told myself that I still tell myself to today is, what's the alternative? I can quit. We can all quit anything, right? But what's the alternative? You're going to go do something you're not that passionate about? No. Nothing good ever comes easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had that moment myself in Yuma in my living room. And my husband had left to LA because I said, I understand you don't have to be here all the time. It's difficult. But I was lucky enough to even get there because I had his support as well, because he said, I'll move with you, we'll do this together. And so having my mom on the phone and then my husband also helping me, you know, it's a similar situation. I think that's a recipe for success, as you can see with several of us here who have been through the same situation. So thank you to all of you who are supporting other people and your family and your friends. It's really, really important.
My experience is so different. My experience is TMZ, and then the Armenian report comes and go. I'm just like, what am I? This is so hard. This is so hard. But thank you for everyone's Again, I feel like I'm happy that I'm here because I feel like my experience is a little different because I felt like I was in this cushiony, like I was being babied, and 9 years, it was time to just fly. I didn't have, it was just mundane every day, same, and that my experience is a little different, yeah.
Yes, I think that support is incredibly important. My family did not quite understand what it is that I was doing when I moved away, and I think they were, not that they were not supported, they were just kind of confused. I was going into the unknown, and financially, if they weren't helping me, I don't think I would have survived. Granted, in Idaho Falls, money goes farther. I had one of the nicest apartments. It was $460 a month. But that being said, I was making $18,000 a year, and I was working 8 jobs. But my husband, who's not here today because he's at home putting one of our children to sleep, hopefully, he also, through this whole process, has been with me and, traveled back and forth. We've been together for 19 years. So he also was very supportive, not just, it's not just about financially, but emotionally and encouraging. So when my family was confused as to what it is I was doing, he was always there pushing me along and saying, it's going to pay off. When I had job interviews in New York, he was the one booking flights and hotel rooms and arranging my schedule so I would go to the job interviews. He's the one who's saying, take that extra shift. To this day, comes to every single event that I do. So having support system is the key if you want to succeed in this business, because it can be lonely at times. And yes, I've had moments where I've wanted to get a flat tire and not finish my assignment.
I think we've all been there.
I get a flat tire right now.
Just stop and go home.
Yeah. And going off of what Ella said, all of you are also a huge support system. I think that the Armenian community as a whole, when we see one of our own doing some really good work, we're excited. We feel like it's ours. I feel like their success is ours. And so every time you see somebody who is speaking out for the Armenian cause, who is doing really good work and excelling at it, it's our success as well.
I remember I was sitting, we were shooting TMZ, and we had the TV screens on, of course, and all of a sudden I saw Arakelyan's name. When did you start?
2012.
So I was there from 2007, so 2012. All of a sudden, I was so excited. I found you on social media, and I while on camera, just messaging Arakelyan. I was so excited. I'm like, hi, I'm Anna, I'm Armenian, I'm on Fox 2, we're gonna be friends.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I had the same reaction when I saw you, because TMZ is on Fox.
Yep.
So I was like, wait, who's this Armenian girl? And I told everyone at work, I'm like, there's this Armenian girl on TMZ. But I think that's the beauty of the Armenian community and Armenians as well. I think because of what we've gone through in history and in our lives, just scattered all around the world. You know the saying, you will find an Armenian anywhere in the world you go. And that is so true, because we find each other and we embrace one another and we try to lift each other up. At least that's the hope. And we take joy in each other's successes. And I think that's very important as a community, and for us also to succeed, and for us to further drive our cause forward. Everyone is always talking about, getting recognition for the genocide. Well, you do that by coming together, by joining forces. Going back to what happened in Armenia with the Velvet Revolution, I think that was an exciting time for many people because it was a moment in time where Armenians all around the world came together, and we became one. And you could just feel that energy. Being all the way in Los Angeles, I remember just feeling this energy. I felt this pull. I wanted to get on a plane. I wanted to go and to be a part of it all. It's very nice and lovely. And although you're in an industry where it's, competitive and, ugliness can come out because that's just the way this business is, it's very nice to know that, we have a human aspect. And I think our cause and being Armenian, our connection comes before all of those things. Personally, that's my feeling.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, too. It is so competitive, but Arakelyan was one of the last people that actually, when I reached out to her, she called me. She didn't know who I was, but she called me, and this is our first time meeting in person, so thank you for hosting this. But she encouraged me and said, no, you got to do it. You got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to move out of your home and do this. And I know it's such a competitive field, so I thank you for uplifting the rest of us in the community who want to pursue these dreams.
Thank you.
Since this is the Women in Media panel, I feel like I have to ask a question about being a woman in media. I think that this is just sort of a general question. Do you see any difference between you and your male counterparts? Are there different expectations placed on you? Off the top of my head, I can assume that just our appearance and the way we present ourselves is a big factor where men can just kind of
do you
do
remember
whatever
that story they did where the man, it was like an experiment, the guy wore the same suit for like a few months and no one noticed?
Yeah, the same black
we didn't even hear about it. That happened, and some of us don't even know.
No one noticed.
If it was a girl, we would have heard this story.
Of course, because as a woman, you're expected to, everyone notices what you wear, and that becomes very annoying.
Yeah.
But it's part of the job again. But yes, there's definitely differences. Shall I continue?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to preface this by saying the people I work with are incredibly secure enough to be around strong women. Most of the men I work with call me bossy, which I have a problem with. I'm like, no, I'm assertive, because bossy has a negative connotation. But that being said, it's interesting. I can make a sarcastic comment or a joke, but sometimes viewers interpret that as me being rude or being mean, and my male counterpart, Tony McEwing, can make a sarcastic joke and they'll interpret that as being funny. That drives me crazy. I don't know if it's being a woman and a man or also just the age, perhaps, like he's much older and then there's me, I'm much younger, obviously. But I have noticed that. Also in the newsroom, the writers write the scripts and I always go in and tweak them because I don't like what they wrote. And I want to, speak in the way I would speak. So what happens oftentimes is after I've read a story, I'll get like a message on the computer from the writer who wrote it, challenging me, like, why did you change this? And, why did you say it like this? And my response is always like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm the one speaking, so I need to be comfortable with what I'm saying. Now, if Tony makes a change in the script, no one says anything. And that also drives me crazy. And again, I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or not. I don't want to say that's the reason. Again, it could be an age thing, and people are more comfortable with someone younger who they can be like, why did you do that versus someone older, right? But yeah, I definitely, I've noticed that for sure in my experience. It's not a big deal. I deal with it.
Yeah, I think we have both of those challenges going for all of us. It's a young woman in the workplace. How do you navigate without being called bossy? Because again, that is what we are called when we're just trying to share our opinion, and those opinions are based on what we've learned working this long.
Well, because men are not called bossy, they're called leaders, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. That's the truth.
We're more easily questioned. I think that people do come up to us and say, well, why did you make that decision versus just letting you make that decision? besides those more obvious points, I think that being a woman journalist, we have more ease of access. People don't find us as threatening, so we're more welcome to scenarios a lot more because, yeah, people don't see us as a threat for some reason, so we get the stories.
It works both ways, I have to say. I think that it does work to our advantage in a lot of ways. I think 20 years ago, men commanded television, but I think now we're seeing 2 female anchors, so it's incredible because I think we're more relatable and women are much more powerful when it comes to spending money, so therefore they like to see women on television that they relate to.
Well, that's where the advertisers target the younger women, yeah.
But I think
So why aren't you buying more clothes?
Yeah.
But I think when you're in the field, all reporters, you can't do this job unless you're tough. Because we go to bad neighborhoods and we have to sometimes approach people that you don't want to approach. Or we go to news conferences and we have to ask questions that people don't want to answer. So it's a fine line where you want to be a girl, but you also want to be tough because you have to be, because this is this job. We didn't get to these markets because we were soft and because we gave up. We knocked on that door for 20 minutes until somebody opened and gave us the interview that we needed to get. In my experience, Arakelyan works in the studio, but I work in the field, so I work with male photographers, and some of them are 50, 60 years old, and I'm technically their boss because it's my story, so it's not their boss, it's a 2-people effort, but it's my story, so I get to tell him, shoot this, get that. And a lot of women in this industry get a bad reputation for being bossy. And I hear this sometimes from my photographers that say, oh, I don't like working with this person because she's too bossy. And I think that's always going to be there. We can't necessarily change certain men because they are just who they are and they're always going to feel emasculated by certain women. I think that you have to stand your ground 100%. I certainly stand my ground and I don't let anybody put me in a corner. But at the same time, I think you need to realize who your audience is. I have the reputation at our station for being the most easy to work with reporter, and that just comes from not taking things personally, because I can't change the world, and I can't change this 50-year-old man who is going to think the way he thinks and wants to work with a guy. But what I can do is frame my requests in a certain way and make him feel like he's kind of in charge, even though he's not. Very clever wives do that at home. And so I think in the workplace, we have to implement the same mentality. I let them think sometimes that it's their show, when in reality, this is, it's my segment, so we're going to do it this way. You just have to learn how the world works. We can't fight certain, you can't fight every battle. You can't walk into every room and find an insecure man or a woman that doesn't like another powerful woman and fight with them. We have to just make it work and get through the day and try to keep our composure. So my advice to anyone who's trying to get into this field or in any field where men kind of dominate is, we're still in charge. We're the neck, they're the head. You can turn it any way you want. You just gotta play it your way.
I wanted to add that I think in this business, a lot of it is the psychological, going off what Elena just said, because each person has like an ego in this business, and each person needs to be stroked a certain way. Mm-hmm. So you realize, okay, I need to get this done, and you're very pragmatic about it. How am I going to get what I need out of this person? And I'm not saying you're being fake, but you're just being wise. So I need to ask this request in this certain way to make them feel like they want to help me versus they need to help me. So it's a psychological game. But you know what? That's true in any field with any job, really. You need to make people feel A, appreciated, because people like to feel appreciated, and B, you need to make them feel like they want to help you instead of you're forcing them to help you. It's a human nature to want to do something for someone else because you want to do it versus you're feeling the pressure that you have to do it.
Mm-hmm. And the added pressure is doing that all on a deadline. So how do I be professional? How do I get this job done? How do I ask you to do this in a nice way, but all in a certain timeline? Because that's really what drives this business, is the deadline.
Exactly. I think that's the one thing we didn't address, is that in news, you have deadlines. You literally will show up to a breaking news situation, and they say you're on air in 5 minutes. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what's going on. You don't know anything. I mean, and you have to educate people on what's happening, and at the same time, you have to also point your photographer kind of in the right direction. Thankfully, we work with very seasoned photographers in LA who know exactly what they're doing. But, it's when it's a time crunch that I think the bad personalities come out and the B word can come out in certain people. So I think you just have to take a breath and like you said, just kind of stroke people's egos just to get it done. Because at the end of the day, you have to be a professional.
That's true. I mean, I work for a late night talk show host, and every show he's ever done has been the best show he's ever done. And I have to make sure that I say that every show's the best. That was the best show you ever did.
The best one was when he took you to Armenia.
That's my favorite too. That's my favorite too.
We're talking about ourselves, and we're not talking about what a big role Sona has played on the Conan show. That was like a 1 hour segment that was probably the funniest. And we talk about how we saw each other's last names and we get excited. You were on a huge show with a huge guy, and you put him in his place.
Oh, thank you very much. I know. Putting Conan in his place is my favorite thing to do.
And thank you for taking him to Armenia while putting him in his place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very nice. Thank you. I really appreciate that. But it's not journalism. I mean, I'm hanging around with a giant white man, and then what you guys do is really fantastic, and I appreciate you saying that. But it's definitely, when I look at you guys, I'm in absolute awe of what you do, because you have to be serious, and I don't, and that would be really hard for me.
Wait, since we're giving compliments, I do want to say something to Anna, because she took by the way, this is the second time we've ever met. We met for maybe a minute, like a month ago. But she really is trying something new, and she's doing this on her own, and it's a hustle. And I think you deserve recognition because you're really working hard, and it's so evident. If you don't follow her, please follow her at the Armenian Report, because it's so clear that she puts her blood, sweat, and tears into this, and she does some amazing work. I learned so much on a daily basis by just watching your stories. No, I think that, of course what we do is tough, and it isn't easy, and it's a field that is hard to get into, but you're taking a risk, and you're doing this all by yourself, and you're trying to make something out of nothing, and I think it's just so commendable.
This is the part where we all compliment each other.
Okay, it's my favorite part.
So I'm moving on to questions on the cards, and then we're just going to wrap up. But this question is actually for Anna specifically. Do you have a vision to grow the Armenian Report beyond social media?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on.
My ultimate goal is to build an app called the Armenian Report in Armenia. So I want to create jobs in Armenia. I want the app to be built in Armenia, and I want us to have reporters on the field in Yerevan, in Artsakh, in New York, so we can all associate with the face and that person with that area. So when you see Aram in Yerevan, you're like, where is Aram now? What's happening? Streets of Artsakh, there's a lot of video coming in from Yerevan, but there's very little video coming from Artsakh. I want to see Artsakh other than the mommy, the grandma and the grandpa. I want to see the children. I want to see the roads, the schools, all of it. And there's very little. And the kids there, the young people there, they're so smart. They speak English, they speak multiple languages, it's not just English. So this is doable. We can have our own reporters, young people on site, literally directly speaking to all of the young community via app. So that's my goal. I'm working on it.
Visionary.
Nice. We'll get there. We're gonna get there.
Okay, so this one, there's two questions on these cards that are kind of touching on the same issue, and I think now more than ever, journalism is under scrutiny. I think just the general climate, people are kind of coming into the situation in a less trusting way, which is very frustrating, I think, to deal with. So my question is, if you guys are encountering a story that you don't necessarily believe in or go against something that you think is true, or even something that might be anti-Armenian in some sense, how do you navigate that? Or do you navigate that? Do you have that kind of freedom to
Well,
do
the
that?
first skill set of a journalist is to be neutral. So
You have to be objective.
I mean, that is the number one thing you have to be. So if you find yourself in a position where you're really struggling and you're too biased, then you should hand that assignment off to someone else, 100%, because that is not, you're not doing a service to anyone. That's not fair. But like I said, I think one of the things that got me into this business is the fact that I rarely see things in black and white. Most of the time, everything to me is gray, which is a very useful skill set to have in this field, because then you're able to see issues on both sides, no matter the issue. You're able to hear people on both sides, no matter what they're saying. And you always say, oh, well, I see that point of view. And you know what? I see that point of view as well. So you need to have that ability in order to do this job. Like, you can't do it without that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the point of a journalist is to be objective. So it doesn't matter what the story is that you're covering, you go into it, it's not about your opinion, you're talking to the people who are involved, they're sharing their perspectives. Your job is to let them, by giving them their platform, share both sides.
Yeah, I agree. We have to do that. And at the same time, you'd be surprised how much freedom you're given as a reporter. When I go to cover a story, yes, I'm assigned to a story, but no one tells me you have to interview this person, you have to talk about this. It's all up to me.
Well, you're producing it on your own.
Right. You're in the field. You're by yourself. You know, you don't have anyone sort of guiding you. And I think the only way to make it so that it is fair and balanced, obviously, is to talk to both sides. But you have to then understand, I'm given 2 minutes, so I have to put the best argument forward. You can't get caught up in too many details, and that's what you learn along the way. You know, it's just like in anything that you do, you want to make people care, but you can't sensationalize it either. And I think sometimes the reason why people have a distrust in media is because we sensationalize something. You know, we give off, it's all about the headline and nothing about the actual
shocking
meat.
something,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
shocking video.
And that's one thing that I hate. And I think when I worked in Fresno, we had a news director that was so sensationalized. He just loved to make it like, you know,
Headline.
dog kidnapped at gunpoint, like, you know. and I struggled with that because I'm not the kind of person to make something bigger than what it is. It's like, this is what it is, and that's it. So you just have to, I think, keep your neutrality and just keep your cool. You don't have to oversell anything. And luckily with local news and with Anna, you have full editorial control. So you decide what you put on, you know, your platform. But I think in local news, you can't, there's no agenda, you know, there's no political agenda. There is no like big corporate agenda. We're literally covering stories that are happening, and we speak to several sources that are trusted. And at the same time, the number one thing in news is you don't have to be first, you have to be right. And it's a skill set of knowing what not to say instead of knowing what to say. You know, we can go on and, you know, sometimes I'm just given a cue from the anchors, go, and I'm live for, you know, a few minutes and I'm talking about anything I want, but it's a matter of pulling in the reins and not giving away something that is either going to compromise my reputation or the station's reputation, or give away a side of the story that's going to change people's opinion in a way that it shouldn't. They really should see both sides, and they should see it in a very balanced way. Don't make it bigger than what it is, to keep the audience's trust, I think.
All we have is our credibility. And in this age of citizen journalists, because you've got your phone, you can post anything you want, you can reach a wide, you know, audience almost immediately through this technology. If anybody is interested in this career, I think that even though we are getting a lot of heat right now, it is really now more than ever super important, because there's a lot of misinformation that is floating out about there because of how easy it is to get it out there. But all we have is our credibility. So, you know, people should know that we are striving to bring you the truth.
Right, and we do get checked. I mean, you have to understand, when you work for a big reputable station and company, there are eyes on you and there are ears on you, and there's people that will call you out if you're saying something that's not accurate, you know. So something that the internet and I'm not talking about, reputable websites, but I'm talking about, people who think they're reporters and are tweeting something out, and then we as seasoned reporters have to feel pressure to compete with these people. Well, I never do. And I will always tell my producers back in the studio, I'll say, listen, I don't have that 100% confirmed. I don't care if these people are tweeting about it. It's my job on the line. Until I can prove it, I'm not going to talk about it. And 100 times we will be right. We had a story recently, no, it wasn't recently, I'm sorry, it was a few years ago, and the executive producer didn't like me. She didn't trust me. She thought I was just a girl they hired, And there was this supposed kidnapping at the Union Station. And I got there and I spoke to the officers on the ground, and I called her and I said, there's no kidnapping, it's a false alarm. She's like, well, I won't name the station. They're not here today. They're like, that reporter's saying it happened. I'm like, well, she's gonna, issue a retraction very soon, I promise you. And she was pressuring me because it's her competition and she wants to look good in front of the other executive producers at the other station. And she's pressuring me to report something I know is not true. And I said, I'm not doing it. I'm not gonna go on air with it. They brought in another reporter to do the story. She went on air and said it. 5 minutes later, the Sheriff's Department, who oversees, has jurisdiction at the Union Station, said it was a false alarm. So stick to your guns no matter what. Don't let it be a competition. It's not about being first, it's about being right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. I was just thinking how funny it would be if your executive producer told you to just kidnap someone, just to make this story true. Just be like, go snatch a kid, let's make this true.
This has been really tough for me because I came from a news organization, TMZ, that breaks stories first, right? Like, we love the headlines, breaking exclusive. What is that? Breaking exclusive. So I can work really fast to confirm, and that's one of the biggest assets that I learned from working at TMZ was confirming stories. But it's really hard for me to confirm stories from Los Angeles that's happening in Armenia. So one of the things that I do that it's been really tough is if there's no video to prove it, I'm not touching it. And a lot of times people message me and say, did you see this story? Did you hear about this story? I don't have video proof. And that's kind of the model that I'm following, because people will question you. And if there's video, I just translate it, you interpret it however you want to interpret it, and it's been working really well. People really appreciate that, and sometimes they want me to, add the little commentary here and there, and I try to do it very seldomly now. But when you show people just video, translate, they really truly appreciate it.
Well, the video speaks for itself.
Yes, you don't need the dog. People are not stupid.
Of course, it's a visual medium on social media and on television as well, but I think sometimes, and this was a very sticky story that some of you might remember, sometimes when you don't have the full video and you only have 15 seconds of it, then that'll hurt you. This wasn't my story, it was another reporter's, but some of you might remember it was an Armenian guy at the beach who got hit by the lifeguard's red thing. Okay. So in the beginning, they made it seem like he was like the punk that, went to the lifeguard and was giving him a hard time and he deserved to be hit. But then the continuation of the video came out, and we had to actually give an apology because it was not his fault. It was the lifeguard's fault because he was the one, bullying him. So I think you have to be very careful nowadays where everybody has a cell phone, and just because we can document things, it doesn't mean it's a trusted source. This person could be altering a video, only sharing a certain perspective of the video. I could shoot something from this perspective and it'll show one side of the story. There's always another side, so you have to be careful. And I think with social media nowadays, we can put something out and it sparks a huge frenzy and everyone thinks they know a story. But let trusted sources also confirm certain things. Just because we all have cell phones that can document something does not mean everybody's a journalist, everybody needs to be listened to. Take the time and listen to the sources that you trust and the organizations that you trust.
Yeah. I think, if I can touch on this, I think it highlights the power of media, and we have so much power because we're picking and choosing. We are editing a story, and we pick and choose what part of the interview we're showcasing. We're picking and choosing what part of the video we're showing, because we don't have all day to put all this content on air. The average reporter package is like 115, 130. Okay, that's not a lot, and you might do an interview for 15 minutes. So you have so much power in what you do. So you have to take that seriously and be very responsible in how you display whatever it is you're showcasing. And I do want to add one thing, because we talked about agendas and seeing things in black and white. There's often a misconception with Fox 11 News, because it's Fox. Fox 11 News is under the umbrella of Fox, but as a local station, we have nothing to do with Fox News. No. So I think people often, I mean, for better or worse, sometimes it works for our benefit. But I think people often don't understand that, and we're just local news. We don't have any agenda at all, and we're just covering local stories. But I wanted to clarify that. Whenever I get a chance, I have to do that, because people often think we're just part of the national network, and we're not.
Okay, so the last question is, what advice do you all have for people aspiring to come into your field? And it could be professionally or even personally. What kind of advice do you have?
Don't compare yourself to anybody. It doesn't matter what job that you're trying to do. I think that is a really big downfall for a lot of people. I think it's important to look to someone who's doing it right and use that as an example of maybe how to get there, but always be yourself, because it's going to show. And once you start getting into that headspace of comparing yourself to somebody else, which can get that way in this industry, I think that it's just going to make it a lot harder for you.
I agree. I think that sometimes when we compare our paths, it's going to steer you in the wrong direction, because just because you admire someone, and it's good to admire people, but it's not good to compete with people. And when we start to mimic them, you never know, maybe your path is going to lead you to somewhere even greater. So just stay authentic. And to anyone who's considering a career in journalism, I say go for it, 100%. Whether you're going to be your own, boss and, start something on your own, that takes a lot of courage, or if you're going to be a reporter that goes to live in God knows where, just do it. It's temporary. Think of it as, medical school or law school. It really will pay off. You will eventually make money that you're proud of. You will eventually work for a city and an organization you're proud of. And the greatest part about our job is that we get to meet people from all walks of life. We get to tell stories. We get to create a narrative, and that narrative becomes a part of history. So it's a very special job and a very special thing that we do. And it just takes you places you would never think. So it's worth it.
My advice is to stand your ground. You're gonna come across a lot of different personalities, as mentioned earlier, and being an Armenian, I got made fun of for my last name. They would make fun of me for what I was eating, and honestly, it wasn't even Armenian what I was eating. I was like, he's like, are you eating hummus again? I'm like, it's lentil. It had nothing to do. So what I'm saying is these things are going to happen, and and I remember being so infuriated, and I wanted to just fight back. But ultimately, I was like, just stand your ground. And I tell everyone this. I'm like, who cares? Stand your ground in every aspect. And one thing that I actually wanted to say was, be kind, be kind. We hear be kind. And today I had an aha moment. I said, the Armenian version of be kind is respect. From the moment I was born, I was taught hadgank, right? Respect. And respect is the equivalent of kindness, in my opinion. And I went through my career respecting everyone, including myself. And I stand my ground, and I'm so proud that I did stand my ground as far as respect goes. And I tell everyone this: don't look back. Did you post that? Don't look back. You posted that, right?
Yesterday.
Don't look back and stand your ground, and you are going to come across people who are going to be jerks to you just because you're Armenian, and they're going to make jokes. And I remember being really frustrated about that at 22, 23. I worked with comedians, and this one guy, I remember he was doing a skit about when people, like different coworkers, when they die, what he's going to say about them. He's like, Anna, I'm going to say, well, Anna taught me about the Armenian genocide, and now I know where the Armenia is on the map, and things like this that would piss me off. And I look back and I'm like, whatever. You know, now Rick knows where Armenia is on the map. So these are things that really frustrated me when I was young, but now I just say, just stand your ground and seek your community. And this is the community on top of your family, and everyone has your back.
I'm going to pretty much echo everything that's been said, but if you're determined to do this, don't give up, go for it. Do not look for the easy way out in any field. This isn't just in this field. If you look for the easy way out, I often find that it takes you longer to get to where you're going. So don't look for the shortcuts. Just focus on yourself and work really hard. Also, it's really important to be genuine and authentic. I think, once again, I 100% believe that the camera doesn't lie, and who you are comes through. So you have to be true to yourself and not jeopardize and compromise who you are for others. In this business, you know, you might feel like you need to be something you aren't because everyone else around you is that way. But don't forget who you are and where you come from. Don't forget how you were raised. And for me, it's very important to not forget my roots, something that I highlight all the time. And at the end of the day, you have to be the best version of yourself. There's always going to be someone smarter than you, prettier than you, funnier than you. Whatever it is, there will always be someone who's more than you are. But if you just focus on you and you're the best version of yourself, then you're going to be very successful. And that's really all that matters.
Okay, that's it. Thank you so much to our incredible panelists. Thank you to the ANCA, and thank you to all of you for staying. That's it. Thanks.
Such a power panel, huh? Thank you, ladies, for being here this evening. As a token of our appreciation, we'd like to present you with a small parting gift for a keepsake for this year's conference.
How did this happen so quick? Oh, that's so sad.
Did you just, how did you see that? It just happened now.
That's incredible. It's like TV news. It just happened. It's already on.
Wow. We're trying to keep up with it.
Yeah, you learned something from this panel today. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone, for staying. We do have the cocktail reception just outside if you'd like to stay and enjoy. Thank you again.
That's impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.